All right, let's do this. Thanks for the introduction and context. I work at A11y. It's a mobile bank, so I'm going to do a 25-minute pitch on why it's better. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I work as an accessibility advocate at A11y. I lead the web team there, and I lead the accessibility initiative, so I try to make sure our web platform is as accessible and inclusive as it can be. So we here to talk about accessibility, and I think you probably all know what it is. A very quick reminder, it's, when we talk about it in general, it is a set of standards. It's a set of principles with guidelines, success criteria, and it is dedicated to build interfaces for everyone. But I'm not here to talk about accessibility. I'm here to talk about inclusive design, which is, again, some sort of an umbrella term to regroup design practices that are dedicated to build interfaces for absolutely everyone, no matter who they are and how they browse the web. So as you can imagine, it's a lot about not being selfish and being able to demonstrate empathy. So this talk is a kind of a feedback session on a few years working in this field, doing workshops on it, working with different teams on different products. And so I'm going to throw a lot of information at you. Don't get scared, don't get too caught up on specifics. Try to see the big picture and kind of see how our job as web designers, web developers, QA, product owners impacts the experience of people. How many of you are web developers? Okay, and designers? All right. We have, sorry, let me back one slide. All right. We're going to talk about impairments and disabilities a lot. This is not always an easy topic, and it's we can split this in 5 different categories. So visual impairments, this is the one we usually talk about the most, especially when we work on the web. Mobility impairments, cognitive impairments, hearing impairments, and finally vocal impairments that we are going to skip tonight because I would need a 45-minute slot to be able to discuss that. I'm going to skip vocal, not because it's less important, it's just for the web, it's usually a little bit less vocal driven. And on top of those categories, we have some sort of a context. So disabilities can be permanent, temporary, or situational. So let's start with a big first category, visual impairments. So the biggest or the most common problem, let's say, is having a low vision. That's my problem, for instance. That's probably the case of quite a few of you tonight. And for many people, life looks like this. So we can do a lot to improve that, and there's a lot of reasons why some people could have a blurry vision, low vision. It could be that they don't wear the glasses because they don't have them, or they broken something. It could be that they are very tired. It could be they are currently crying. So there's a lot of reasons. We don't get to call on the reasons, and instead we see what we can do about it. So I guess this is really stating the obvious at this stage, but having a large font size is really something that helps a lot. So the copy of a website usually should live between 16 and 22 points. Anything below is at risk. Anything above has its own sets of problems. And the contrast should be good. This is a topic we'll come back over and over and over again tonight. But I think this is probably one of the main problems we have on the web right now. Is the contrast is shit everywhere. It comes from a long design trend of having very light fonts on very light backgrounds. So this is definitely something we can work on. Something that we also got better at as an industry is stop preventing zooming. For a long time, especially when mobile devices started being all the hype, it was very common to disable the zooming so that the application looks native-like. This is pretty bad. I know that I personally zoom a lot on mobile. How many of you do use the zoom a lot on websites? Yeah. So yeah, don't prevent zooming, and because zooming should be possible, it means that everything should scale. So I think there's a few things that bothers me more when zooming. That's the fixed navigation that just doesn't scale and stays on top of the screen. So everything should be scaling, images, vectors, and so on. And something that can help a lot with people who struggle reading is combining text with more than text. So colors is a good example, shapes, imagery, and so on. The second big vision, sorry, let me try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. The second big visual impairments we usually talk about on the web and in design is color blindness. And it shares its own sets of constraints. And this is a lot of them. Sorry, we find them in any case of low contrast, which is it can be because you are looking at your phone in the sun. It can be because you are using flux or night mode because it's night and you don't want to get blind by your screen. It can be because you are on a very shitty monitor from 1988 and the contrast is terrible. So, I mean, this is really obvious at this stage, but improving contrast helps a lot. So making sure that things are contrasted enough. And the rule to remember here about contrast is that the smaller your font size, the higher the contrast needs to be. This is also a good reason to have a large font size for copy text, is that you don't have to have a super strong contrast. So if you have a very large title, you can lower down your contrast if you need, because they kind of balance each other out. This is why, despite the fact that it's on a projector and that the contrast is not fantastic, you can probably all read the slides here. And the nice thing about contrast is that it's not opinionated. It's not like a magic thing that people can have a strong opinion against or for. Contrast is you can compute it. So you can put a number between a foreground color and a background color, and not only you can put a number, but you can also test this number against standards that can tell you whether your contrast is passing, your contrast is good enough, is excellent, and so on. So further than that is you can automate that. You can have automated testing to make sure that your contrast is good enough everywhere in your app. This is a very good tester, but where is it stored? Contrastratio.com, probably. And when we talk about color blindness, usually the main solution is to not use color as the only vector for information. It doesn't mean we should not use color. It is a fundamental part of design, of course, and of life. But color should not be the only way to provide information to a user. So on that topic, it means we need to be careful with color-coded elements such as heat maps or toggles, things like this. Again, it doesn't mean we should not use them, but they should be working without the color layer. Which is why it's on those kind of elements, it's good practice to combine the color with a pattern. Trello does that fantastically, where they have those labels, which are for some reason just colors at the beginning, and they have a colorblind friendly mode, which applies some patterns on top of it, so stripes, squares, so that even someone who cannot really distinguish colors or don't see color at all can still benefit from this labeling system. And on a more critical impairments regarding vision is the topic of blindness. We mentioned it in the previous talk, and because blind people use screen readers and assistive technologies to browse the web, it means we need to work on the content structure. It means that things should be in order. Things should come in a relevant way. So header first, main title, copy, footer at the bottom. And again, this is something we discussed in the previous talk. It goes kind of hand to hand, although it's not similar. It goes hand to hand with keyboard usage. So We need to make sure that everything is operable, and this is one of the 4 big principles of the WCAG guidelines, sorry. So everything should be working without a mouse. Which means that we can use overstay, but they should not be exclusive. Things should work without a mouse. So even if there is a drop down that opens on hover, it should still open on focus, for instance. And the topic we probably all know all too well about is providing alternative text to everything. So images, graphics, charts, diagrams, videos. And I think this is probably one of the main problems we have on the web regarding having an accessible web for blind people. And if you haven't, try a screen reader. How many of you have tried a screen reader before? That is fantastic. Yeah, if you haven't, try a screen reader. You don't even have to. So if you work on Mac, there's one built in the OS. It's called VoiceOver. And if you don't work on Mac, there's one on Chrome that you can install. It's called Chrome OS. Give it a go. Even with the screen on, it's quite an eye-opening experience to see how people browse the web. So let's move on to our second big category, mobility impairments. Because we're talking about the web here, we're going to talk about mobility, disabilities, upper body parts. So again, there's a lot of reasons why someone could have an impairment like this. One is having only one hand available. It can be unfortunate, like someone who has only one arm, for instance, but it can also be someone who has their infant in their arms. Someone with an upper limb disability, such as a broken wrist, someone suffering from tendonitis or carpal tunnel syndrome, or again, more critically, someone suffering from a hand tremor or Parkinson's disease. And what can we do to improve the experience of someone experiencing a mobility disability? One is on mobile, putting the CTAs, call to action, at the bottom. I think this is why a lot of popular websites move their main navigations as a fixed bottom bar. It's just easier to reach when you have only one hand available. This is a very good example from Luc Robelski, sorry. So there is one part on the screen of any kind of mobile phone that is easy to reach, and there's the top part that is very hard when you have only one hand available. So maybe don't put your navigation there. We should avoid multi-touch, and when I say avoid here, it's not removing it altogether. It's more making sure they're not the only way of performing an action. For people suffering from tendonitis, if some of you have experienced it in the past or still do, you know that repetitive gestures are what cause pain. So any kind of action that is very repetitive, especially when you build dedicated software, such as software for customer support or things like this. We should pay attention to that and limit the amount of actions that are necessary to go through the critical path of the app. In general, we should be very forgiving with accuracy. I think we're all getting better as an industry, especially after initiatives like material design guidelines, where these kind of considerations are taken into account, and we have large buttons, we don't expect too much accuracy from people, but this is really something to pay attention to. And I highly recommend to test your software or your product or your website with your other hand. So either plug the mouse on the other side, use the trackpad with your other side, and on the phone, just try your other hand. It is terrifying. Like applications you use on a daily basis, you would be surprised at how much you struggle to use them. And again, something we discussed before, but screen readers are not only for blind people. A lot of people suffering from mobility disabilities use screen readers to ease the pain, or because they literally can't do otherwise. So keyboard navigation on screen readers are also very much to take into account, not only for people with vision deficiency. we're entering our third category, which is probably the biggest one, and I would say the most sensitive one. I only set up a few examples there because I would need a 2-hour session to really discuss everything possible there, if even. So I think the topic, the cognitive impairment we discuss the most, I would say, or is the most known, is autism. And the UK government did fantastic posters on how to design for autism. It boils down to a set of good practices, which is working a lot on layout to make sure they are consistent and easy to use. Being explicit and straightforward in the copy. I mean in layout, but also and most importantly in the copy, which means avoiding unexplained acronyms, which means avoiding figures of speech, which are sometimes hard to grasp, which is also a valid point for non-native speakers. When I moved to Berlin quite a few times, I was like, I don't understand what that means. An interesting thing is that video captions are not only useful for people who can't hear, but for many people who have a hard time processing audio, it can be very helpful to have captions. Moving on to the topic of dyslexia, which is let's say, struggling to read a lot of content, let's put it this way. I think the main thing is use a clear font face. So let's put it this way. Some font faces are meant to be read, some are not. So use a font face that is meant to be read for your main copy. But keep in mind that a lot of people having dyslexia change it in their browser, and they might switch to something like Open Dyslexic or Comic Sans, which is a fantastic font for that. Cap the amount of characters per line at 70, between 70 and 80. This is usually the most comfortable. Make sure there's a good line height. Work on contrast, again, contrast please. Make sure your content is start aligned, so left to right for Latin languages, for instance, and right to left for Arabic languages, for instance. You can, of course, center headlines, that's totally fine, but main content should absolutely not be centered. It should not be justified ever, because justification creates odd gaps between words, which actually makes reading harder. So just start align the content. And if you can, provide alternative ways to consume the content. So not everybody likes reading. Some people prefer processing audio, some people prefer looking at a video. So if you can provide your content in different ways, definitely do. Vestibular disorder, so commonly known as motion sickness. This is more the scientific term. Who remembers parallax? Nice. Yeah, so that's good because we come from like I would say a solid 5 or 6 years of having parallax scrolling everywhere, and people slowly realized that it was kind of shitty. So that's good because we do that less, but all in all it means don't abuse that. Sometimes it's subtle and smooth and nice. Most of the time it's janky and dirty. Avoid scrolling in behalf of the user. We all know, everybody knows how to use scroll since the 90s. So just let people do their thing. And work with animation in a subtle way. Someone used to say good animations are invisible. That's true. So don't go too crazy with that because this can be really a problem for people suffering from motion sickness. If you can provide a way to disable animations across the board, that's a good feature to implement. This is something we'll have on the next version of the N26 web app. I insisted to build this feature. So we'll have an option to basically disable all animations, transitions, animated GIFs and video across the app. Moving on quite a similar topic in many ways, attention deficits and hyperactivity disorder, which is characterized by sometimes the lack of focus, so build consistent user flows, work on your structure, work on your layout, define critical paths that the user should take to complete an action, such as ordering something on an e-commerce website. Avoid infinite animations, something like a pulse, or a spinner that is always on screen, or anything that is done on booking.com, really, at this stage. And moving on to, I guess, a bit more of a set of difficult topics. First one being anxiety. Okay, how many of you enjoy booking plane tickets? Okay, how many of you are stressed when they book plane tickets? Yeah, I feel you. So one thing we can work toward building with anxiety in mind is avoiding anything time sensitive. This is usually a good pattern in a way because we have to accept that we don't always have full attention from our users. So anything time sensitive should be kind of either super optional or avoided altogether. Be clear and supportive with the content. The copy is a very important part of any kind of website, applications, products, projects, whatever. So be very clear, be explicit. This is a screenshot from GitHub. The repository settings have a danger zone, which is scary because it's red and it's a lot of like big buttons and big words. But that's good. That's the point. That's very explicit. Any kind of critical action should be reviewed if possible. And this is the case of any kind of shopping cart, of course. And one thing I like Amazon to do is during the checkout process, the next button always says whether there will still be time to review the order, or like it's now. You need to make sure you want that item. Another difficult topic is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It is difficult because we have no idea what our users went through, and we should not make assumptions about that. And we can't know, and the best we can do is figure out a set of narrow down a set of topics that are possibly sensitive. And for that, emit trigger warnings. Trigger warnings is the process of mentioning before offering content what kind of content it is. This is especially relevant if you provide sexual content, mature language, violence, anything about death, rape. So it depends a lot on the product you build. I guess if you build a bank or a freelancing software, it's less of a problem. If you build a platform to provide editorial content about news, for instance, this is something very much to consider. Again, working on the copy, review it, make sure it's fine, review it by a diverse group of people. It's good to review it, but so you should not review your own copy, that's one thing. Do we have copywriters tonight? So have it reviewed by people from different gender, different religion, background, ethnicity. Just make sure that the copy you have as core of your app is not insensitive, is not inappropriate, is not offensive. And in case you doubt, you leave out the jokes, which is a good advice for life too. If you meet someone for the first time and you feel like joking and you're not sure if it's appropriate, you don't do it. And the last topic we'll tackle on cognitive impairments is epilepsy, which is a very difficult one as well. Fortunately, the risks are rather minor. I mean, this is unlikely it will cause a problem, but still avoid flashing content, like highly flashing. We're not talking about just video here, like something very visually aggressive. As much as possible, animate, at least do heavy animations on user demand. Like play videos on user demand, but that's a good rule of thumb for any kind of user. And this is very important because you can give someone a seizure. So this is not even about locking people out. This is about putting someone in a hospital. So again, the risks are minimal, but of course, be careful about that. And our last category for tonight is the hearing impairments, which is impacting, of course, a lot of people. Fortunately, on the web, it's surprisingly easy to accommodate for that. So a few reasons, why it could happen. One is there's a lot of environments in the streets, in the U-Bahn, or in a bar, for instance. Someone who can have an ear infection, or who does not hear very well, be it temporarily or permanently, and of course someone who cannot hear at all. So a few things we can do to improve on that, and again, it's surprisingly easy. It's one, not having audio content as the only form of content. So if you provide audio at school, that's super, but provide a text alternative. For instance, if you provide videos of conferences or things like this, provide transcripts, if you provide sound, provide lyrics, something like this, and caption videos. This states the obvious. There is surprisingly a lot of science going into captioning, good captioning, I mean. I would love to do like a 10-minute spin-off on that. I don't have time. But if you work on that field, if you work with videos, do some research or ask me, I'm happy to help, because this is a very interesting topic as well. And well, that's the wrong slide. Sorry about that. That's part of the talk that I can't do. So that's the part of the vocal impairment that I can't go through right now. Right. So I've threw a lot of information at you. I can see you're all kind of depressed now. That's expected. I mean, I've done this talk a few times, so I know. But let's wrap up on a positive note. We saw that there is quite a few guidelines, a few best practices we can do to make everybody's life better. One is working a lot on layout and structure. This is important for a lot of different people, and basically anyone in general. Work on your content, work on the structure, work on the navigation, make sure that everything is clear, consistent, and easy to access. Color and contrast are a large part of design. They are difficult to balance with aesthetics, but this is very important. I discussed with a designer not so long ago who told me that he designed in black and white entirely, fully, and then eventually at the end he would add the color on top, which I find is a very smart way of tackling a very hard problem, where he never has the case where he has color as the only vector for information, because he doesn't consider color during the design process. Just an idea. We've seen it before, but stick to common patterns. As much as you can, stick on the browser behaviors, or if you work on native, stick on the OS platform behaviors. Don't reinvent the wheel. Sometimes it's good to be creative, it's good to be imaginative. It's good to create good user experience, but all in all, we want things that work the way we want them, the way we know them. So stick to common patterns, because usability should come before aesthetics and delight, or whatever is the word we use to describe user interfaces those days. It is difficult to balance. I can see designers frowning at me right now. It is difficult to balance. It is difficult to find a sweet spot between having something super nice to use and super easy to use. But in general, content that you can browse and the product you can use is better than the product that looks nice. And I think I'd like to finish on the fact that this is not about fixing it. We're not going to fix that. People are too different and have a set of problems that is bigger than we can imagine. So this is not about fixing accessibility or fixing or solving the topic of inclusive design. This is really about just being better every day. If you work on products, you have the luck of being able to iterate on products and making it better every day. So think about more people, think about more edge cases, more stress cases, more consideration. it sounds cheesy, but accept that people are different. We're all different, even in this room where we look very much alike, but we're all very much different. So accept that we don't all consume the content and browse the web the same way, and design products for everyone, and keep building cool shit. Thank you.